Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. So, a lot of you have been compelled about the problem I've been having with the Honda Monkey cutting out on me. And I know a lot of people are looking forward to seeing what I figure out with this problem. I've had a hunch about it being the oxygen sensor from my race car stuff, because I've known that when running air-fuel ratio monitoring equipment that uses the O2 sensor to get a wideband reading on the air-fuel ratio, that if the sensor is not heated and it's not part of the circuit, so essentially, I'm going to step back a bit. Oxygen sensors can be heated. I'm not sure if the one on the Honda Monkey is a heated element sensor or not, but at the end of the day, if the sensor is in the circuit, so if the sensor is in the exhaust system and it's not being used and it's not heated, it could cause the sensor to burn out early. So that's my thought process, is that I had the Bazaz system on the bike for a while, and the Bazaz did not use the OEM oxygen sensor. You actually disconnected it and then grounded it out. So it's kind of leading me to believe that perhaps the O2 sensor not being in the circuit for a while has caused it to fail. So my plan is to take the brand new sensor that is in my 2015 Honda Grom and try it in the Monkey, and then try the one that's in the Monkey in the Grom and see if the problem swaps over to the Grom. Theoretically, this should work. I haven't really tried it yet, so we're going to go about this together right now, and we're going to check it out, see if it'll even work. The bikes are almost identical in mods, and I did this to kind of have a little bit of a check and balance for situations just like this. So the Grom has the TB parts cam, man-in-the-box intake, has an FMF exhaust on it, and it also has a DHM ECU tune done to it. So really the same bike when it comes down to the engine and the controls. So that's a good thing. And I had recently replaced the sensor on the Grom because the previous owner had actually cut the sensor off because he was using the Power Commander 5. So I know it's a brand new sensor and I know it works. The Grom does not have the cutting out problem. So that's what we're going to do. Let's check out the Grom, get the sensor off of it. It's going to be a little bit of a pain because I got to take that side flashing out right over there, and then we'll get it on the Monkey. And then we'll ride and we'll see if the problem carries over to the Grom, and we'll see if the problem clears up on the Monkey. So the oxygen sensor on the Grom and the Monkey is in the same spot. It's right there on the side of the motor. You see it here on the Monkey, right there. The Monkey is really cool because it's just open right here. So you can see that is the connector for the oxygen sensor. It's very straightforward. Basically just it's going to be an open end wrench, kind of hustle it out of there, and then the Grom is going to be a little bit more of a pain because of this side molding here, but I've had it off a million times, and the only reason we need to take that off is to be able to get to the connector, which I don't believe we will be able to get to, and I can't really feel up under there, so we'll just take the side flashing out and swap it over. So I have some of these things velcroed up because I do a lot of riding where there's sticks and stuff that can jump up and grab one of these wires. So we just kind of take our cap off here, and then we'll get a deep socket, reach in and grab that sensor off. However, I think my man in the box little sensor guard here is probably going to get in the way. So we'll just move this, get some access to that oxygen sensor, grab the 17mm deep socket, just get this out. Wasn't in there too tight. And it really kind of looks like a spark plug. And you can see the sensor element here. And then we'll just swap this one over to the Monkey. So an interesting thing that I found out about the Grom versus the Monkey here is that the oxygen sensor on the Grom is kind of like a spark plug where it has this top on it, and the Monkey is a one-piece sensor here. So I took all the flashing and molding off of the Grom to be able to get to this connector, but then I realized that I probably didn't have to do that, but actually it turned out I did, because I needed to transfer over the whole cable, because the Monkey is a one-piece, so I need the cable as well. So we'll just go ahead and get my sensor guard, my man-in-the-box sensor guard off here. A little dress-up piece, it's pretty nice, and it just has a little tabbed pin connector here. So we're going to go ahead and disconnect the sensor up top, and getting this connector around this brake line can be a little bit tricky. So you're probably going to want to unroute the cable down below, get yourself more cable to work with. Try to slide it around underneath the connection to the back brake, and then out underneath the hose over there. And now we're going to look back down here by the sensor. Okay, so without the oxygen sensor wrench, you're kind of stuck. So I was able to force the connector through the open end part of this wrench, and let's see if we can't squeeze it in there. Get some wrench on this. It's a little tough with the exhaust here too. The fins on the engine case make this kind of tough. You can get in there. So we just got in there, and we'll unscrew the oxygen sensor. Take the whole thing out. It looks really similar to the Grom. So then we're going to take the Grom sensor here, and you can see they really look very, very close. So the last thing I'll check before I plug the Grom sensor in, and we'll make sure it threads in clearly, which it does. That's cool. And then we'll be able to use the socket on the Grom sensor. But I want to check to make sure the Grom connector is the same as the Monkey connector, and just by eyeing it up, it almost certainly is. I'm just going to plug it in up here to the connector off camera, and it does fit. So I'm going to connect that in. I'm going to tighten up this oxygen sensor here. Not going to put much torque on it at all, because it is hard to get out, or the Monkey one is hard to get out if you can't get that socket in there. So we're going to go ahead and plug the cap in. I'm going to see if this Grom sensor actually works with the Monkey. Then we throw our sensor guard back on there. Nice little billet aluminum piece from Man in the Box. One of those cool little $20 upgrades. You can do the Monkey. They also have it in black. That's what I had on the Grom. We'll cinch this in, and then we'll move back to the Grom and throw that sensor on there. I don't think you're too interested in seeing that process, so I'll do that off camera. And then we'll start her up, see if it works, and tonight we'll probably do a little bit of riding to see if I can reproduce a fault on the Grom and see if the fault clears on the Monkey. Okay, so the oxygen sensors are swapped between the Grom and the Monkey. The Grom's O2 sensor was, I presume, an older style, and it had like a spark plug cap sort of connection on it. which I actually like better because it's a lot easier to work with. You can take it off with the socket, a regular socket, not an oxygen sensor socket. And so that's it. Basically, we're going to test it out, and I don't even know if it's going to work. I don't know if it's the same sensor. There wasn't much information in the manual about the sensor other than how to change it, and there wasn't any reset procedures or procedures on how to test it to make sure it's still good. So in my opinion, the only way to really test it out is to put in a different one, whether it be a new one or one from another bike like I did. So next step is to actually go road test it, and we're going to do this with both the Grom and the Monkey, and we're going to see if we can reproduce the problem. Okay, so we're going to go on a little road test. However, I already know that my oxygen sensor swap did not fix the problem, because I was riding around our backyard track yesterday and the bike was cutting out still. So what we're going to do this time is kind of just ride and see if there's some sort of time that it takes for this problem to happen. We'll start a stopwatch here and we'll see how long it takes for the problem to start, the cutting out to start. So my theory was that the oxygen sensor was bad and it was causing the ECU to throw some sort of protective code or protective measure and cut the engine out. And my theory behind this was the oxygen sensors are closed mode operation sensors. So that means in a closed mode, or closed loop, I'm sorry, I'm saying mode, but closed loop. So during a closed loop, the ECU is taking the input from the oxygen sensor and the other sensors, and it's calculating how much fuel it should be given the bike based on those inputs. And when you go wide open throttle, the ECU goes into open loop, which means it's no longer taking the inputs from the oxygen sensor, and it's just giving the engine all the fuel that it can give it. It's like a wide open throttle application. It changes the ECU into a different mode where it's not necessarily looking at the oxygen sensor. I don't know if it's looking at any other sensors along the way to providing what it thinks it should provide, but I do know from my Miata and my racing that the oxygen sensors on the older cars, we actually took them out of the exhaust system and kind of just grounded them out, because we're always operating in open loop mode. We're wide open throttle almost all the time in a race car, and you know, there's basically no need for any closed loop activity on the racetrack. So the oxygen sensors could have been more of a problem, but they still needed to be in the system. So we kept them in the system, just grounded them out, and you know, they weren't really a factor because the ECU wasn't even looking at that input. Oh, got a cutout already, right there. I purposely stalled it, but how many? That wasn't even 3 minutes. So that's basically one of the fastest cutouts I think I've ever had. So my first step in troubleshooting has failed. Obviously, I knew it was going to fail, but I just wanted to see how long it was going to take. So there goes my theory behind the oxygen sensor being the problem. So what could be the next area that we could look at? I got a lot of really good feedback from my first video from you guys. A lot of good feedback on the Facebook groups. And I think the next area that I'm going to go, in the direction I'm going to go and look at, is the ignition coil. I got a piece of advice that said the connections on the ignition coil could be a little flaky, so we'll check that out. I wiggled them yesterday, but I honestly don't want to fix the problem without knowing what fixed it, so I don't want to do more than one thing at a time. So the next area is the ignition coil, and what the other suggestions I got too. Close the visor to see if it's quieter. So the next area, or the next target after that, would be to go through the whole bike and every connector on the bike and make sure that all the connections are good, and maybe even, you know, tighten up the connections where I can, you know, squeeze them with the needle nose plier if they're like a spade connection, or just you know, maybe put a little dab of dielectric grease on them even in case there's moisture. But I don't really ride in the rain, so I don't think that would be a problem. So yeah, no real need to keep going. What was going to happen happened exactly the way that I thought it would, just a lot quicker. I was thinking yesterday that maybe when the bike gets hot that the problem surfaces, and that's certainly not the case today, because the bike was only running for 3 minutes, so it wasn't really that hot. And that's it. So let's go to the next step. Thanks for watching. Thanks for all the suggestions and the help and interest that you guys had in this little problem, and we'll pick it up in the shop to take a look at the next problem.